Okay, in this video I'm going to be doing a brake bleed on my Shimano SLX brakes on my mountain bike. The first thing I've done off camera is remove the front tire off the bike, and I've also removed the brake pads. So the first thing I'm doing is taking a 2.5 millimeter Allen key and removing the brake bleed bolt off of the brake levers. And then I'm going to put on this syringe system. There's a whole bunch of different systems that are out there. This is a bit of an older system, but it's going to work fine. And I'm going to do the reverse flow to push all the brake fluid up and out. And then I'm going to do the gravity method to add the new fluid back in. I would argue that you could probably just do the gravity method and that would work without any issues. And in fact, I think the last time I did this, I just did the gravity method. So if you didn't have syringes and stuff, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I think you could achieve good results with just the gravity method. So like I said, I've already removed the brake pads and I've just installed the syringe, pulled up a bunch of fluid. Now I'm just trying to get some bubbles out of the tubing before I actually push this brake fluid up and out through the brake system. So the drain screw on the brake calipers is an 8 millimeter, and just loosen that until you can start moving brake fluid through the system. And then with the syringe, just push the brake fluid through the system. Pretty straightforward. Obviously, you don't want to get air into the system, so don't keep pushing until air bubbles flow into the brakes. And once I'm satisfied that enough brake fluid has been pushed through the system, I'm going to take that 8 millimeter wrench again, and I'm going to tighten the brake bleed screw on the bottom so that no fluid flows back down through the system while I empty the syringe up top. Now I'm going to use this Shimano brake fluid that I got to fill it back up, and I've just filled the syringe up top. And one thing to note, obviously I just threw the old brake fluid out before I put in the new brake fluid, is that you don't want to get any air bubbles back in the line. So if there's any air bubbles in the top end, just flick the tubing until they come out. And then I'm going to go down to the brake caliper, open the bolt again, and allow the brake fluid just to drain out. So I've pushed it up and out, and now I'm allowing the new brake fluid to go down and through the brake caliper, basically. Now for this, I don't have any brake blocks, but I didn't really have any issues with that. While the brake fluid's draining, I do squeeze the brake levers a few times, and that helps agitate any bubbles out of the system. And with the bleed screw on the bottom open, it's not going to cause the pistons to extend, most likely. But they do have brake blocks. You might want to use one of those. Now, before the syringe at the top totally drains out and we start getting air through, I'm going to close the bleeder screw on the bottom. Then I'm going to go up top and remove the syringe. And then I'm going to reinstall the drain and fill bolt up on the top. One thing to note, if your brake levers are on a severe angle, say downward, you might want to adjust them so your brake levers are more level. So now moving on to the rear brake, I'll remove the drain and fill screw off the brake levers. I'll reinstall the syringe up top. And just like on the front, I took the tire off and the brake pads off camera. I've installed the syringe on the caliper, open the drain screw, and just push the brake fluid up and through. Then I'll close the bleeder screw on the brake caliper, come up top, remove the syringe. You can see that I left the hose in place so I'm not getting air bubbles into the system, and then I'll come fill the syringe up with the fresh Shimano brake fluid. Again, if there's any bubbles in the tubing up at the brake lever, just give it a few flicks to get any air bubbles out. So basically you want to keep air bubbles out of the system, and if you do that, then you're probably going to be good to go. So now I went back to the bottom, just installed the plain tubing, no syringe, opened the bleeder screw, and just allowed the brake fluid to flow back down. Again, just making sure that no air bubbles get pulled into the system. And just like on the front brake, I give the lever a few pumps while I allow the brake fluid to flow out. After monitoring the tube for a while, make sure there's no air bubbles making it through the system, and it looks pretty good. So now I'll just take that 8 millimeter wrench again and tighten up the bleeder screw at the caliper, and that's about it. Give that a wipe down. Now, Once again, if you have a brake block, you can put it in between the brake pistons. Another thing you could do, although I've never done it myself, is to adjust the position of the free stroke screw on the brake lever to try and get additional air bubbles out. Like I said, I've never done it and I've never had any issues doing it this way. And just off camera, I did remove the syringe and reinstall the bleed screw on the brake lever. And before you go out on a ride, give the brake levers a few squeezes, make sure they're good to go. Biggest thing here, just make sure you don't get any air bubbles in your system and try and get every air bubble you can out of the system. Anyway, thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.